related, and you can show the connectedness between the state of the system and the annual midterm results. Please, I plead with you to understand that when it comes to even questions related to, because I know it's a topical issue, Eskom's turnaround strategy and all those type of things will be part and parcel of next week when we do our, when is the date, by the way? The 28th, eh? Yeah, on the 28th we'll do that. We'll send you an invitation for that. So let's try to look at the performance of our quarterly state of the system. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, you're welcome. And the first person to speak to you to open up will be our Group Chief Executive Officer, Pakamani. Over to you, boss. Oh, I forgot the most important thing. You know, it's because you are part and parcel of the furniture here. You always here. We invite you for the quarterly state of the system. We invite you for the annual report. We invite you most of the time when we have events. So I forgot that you have to do one of the most important things is my learned colleague here and to come and do our safety. Over to you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. My name is Emmanuel. In the event of an incident in the building, we have a PA system in this Franklin auditorium. We will receive the message from the control center. We listen to that message. Then you take your belongings. From this auditorium, we have only two available emergency exit doors. Is two at the back here, one on my right and another one on my left. When you go, the one on my left, you go out, you will see the staircase. Take the staircase down and go through the security checkpoint. Outside there, next to the pole, you will see the assembly point number 2. We can assemble there with our attendance register. I hope everybody in the room did sign the attendance register. It makes it easy for our safety officers to do a roll call when we are outside there on an assembly point. If you use the one on my right, is a passage. You go out, take your right. At the end of the passage is a glass door. Go through the glass door and take your right again. And then you take the staircase to assembly point number 2. If the problem is on this part of the building, or maybe the staircase is blocked, then you go straight as you go into the building. By the retail stores, you will take your right and go through the security checkpoint there, and you will see the next bus terminal. Next to the bus terminal, there's a car park. Next to the car park, there's assembly point number 1. We can also use that assembly point due to the incident in the building. Should you need to report anything in this room, any hazard or any incident from your cell phone, please dial 011 800 6666 or 011 800 4441. On those two assembly points, you wait there until our safety officers come and address us if the building is safe and clear, and then you come back to the same auditorium and continue with the business of the day. I thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Now that you know that you are safe and sound and welcome here, may I call upon our Group Chief Executive Officer, Pakamani Hadebe, to come and open up this event. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jose. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a journey. You know, I was just sitting here thinking about 7 months back. I came here to present the financials, and I had been about 6 weeks or so in this place. I still see the same faces, and I think the story will be a bit different today. Now, I'm one that holds a very strong view that South Africans deserve a true story of what is happening so that they can plan their lives as they move forward. I also believe that I'm not just talking about a normal South African like me and you, but it also helps those in business to then make a call as to what kind of journey we're going to travel. Our plan is not to do anything untoward or different from that. Eskom has undergone quite a trying times during the past couple of years. And it is up to us, those that have had a privilege to work at Eskom, to do the level best to bring this institution where it belongs. But I must say that the journey is not going to be easy. That before we turn around this huge institution, it's going to be a tough journey that demands painful decisions. So the story today will not be the exciting one, but it's a story that you have to know. Because it is through you that South Africans will understand what is happening. We have undertaken quite a lot of measures in stabilizing the institution, reducing the CAPEX, reducing OPEX. That saved us, last time we spoke about that, it will be saving us about 100 billion within a space of 5 years. There are no promotions, we are not employing anyone new. At senior management, no salary increases or bonuses. We knocked on the doors of NESA until we got the 32 billion rands. We got a 1 billion rand from McKinsey. So the story should be promising. But because of the depth from which you are coming from, there needs to be other painful decisions that will have to be taken as we're moving forth. And accordingly, you will see that the system status highlights or is reflective of the decisions that have been made, not just now, but that have also been made previously when this institution was going through trying times financially. But that doesn't exonerate us from some of the decisions that we have made. So, in a nutshell, I will provide a summary of the system performance. I think most of you are quite familiar about the developments that's been in the media. I will look at the operational performance. I'll touch on the future outlook. But importantly, we'll talk about the 9-point recovery plan that will move us, at least in the short to medium term, where we need to be. Then I'll provide some conclusion. Now, while distribution and transmission, together with Quebec, have done exceptionally well at Eskom, but we are facing severe challenges when it comes to generation. It's operational challenges. It's an area that we have to look into. The causes, there are many, but in a nutshell, is a deterioration of coal power stations. That's the first thing. And the second thing has to talk to the fact that 10 stations have less than 20 coal power stock days. That's a challenge. We spoke about this about 3 months back. We have made an effort in changing the status quo, but we haven't reached at the level where the situation is totally different from the previous one, although you'll see some improvements. And I want to highlight this, and it's quite important, that while the causes of this are inherent, it is important for us as management of Eskom to acknowledge that some of the challenges we are facing happen in our midst. So the outcome of all these challenges has been the increased utilization of emergency resources, such as OCGTs, that's the gas. And you will see when we present that. And the manifestation is that the EAF for financial year 2018 is 74.2. That is not adequate. We need 75% to be adequate. The current system, therefore, is not optimal. And as we move forth to try to turn around this ship, we want to highlight that we do have a recovery plan. And we have touched, in the presentation, I'll touch on a couple of issues. However, it's crucial that I inform you that the load shedding cannot be ruled out for the remaining part of the year. And we request South Africans to use electricity sparsely, especially during the peak times. Now, as I've already indicated, looking at generation, EAF is 74.2. The planned maintenance is 8.82. I'd like to highlight that the planned maintenance will increase further. Probably by the end of the year, it will be more than 9%. But that is deliberate, as we're going to spend more time on maintenance. If you're looking at unplanned maintenance, it is high. It's 15.7%. That is huge. This is one area that needs special attention that we can focus on if we are to ensure that the South African economy grows and is sustainable. The story on transmission, as I've already indicated, is a good one. The track record, the performance is positive. The execution is 99% of the planned work completed. That is good. You go to distribution. We've been able to improve the customer experience by reducing outage durations. That is 34.9% versus a target of 38%. Frequency of interruptions, again, is 14.3, target 19.8. We have electrified 82,371 homes as at end of October. And this is a step in the right direction. When you're looking at a new build, again, mid-to-be units 3 and 2 have been synchronized to the national grid. That is on the 8th of April and 7th of October. Additional 1,500 megawatts from mid-to-be unit 3 and Kusile unit 2 will be commercialized within this financial year. The 5-foot megawatts transformer capacity commissioned and 227 kilometers line built on the track is also a good story. But The story is reflected here as to where we are. You will see that we have increased. This is November. The OCGs have increased, and they will come down in December, but continue for the remaining part of the year until the end of a financial year, where we expect them to come down. This is intended primarily, put aside some of the challenges that we are facing. It's intended to accommodate the anticipated planned maintenance, as I've already indicated. Of course, this capacity outlook is based on the planned outages that will come forth. And I will talk about that later. But I just want to highlight that December, this period, because the demand will be far less, will be used even more than the rest of the time, of the days, in improving or in spending time on planned maintenance. Now, this then gives you a story. It highlights a couple of things. The first thing it highlights is our unplanned. As you can see, financial year is 15.3. That is huge. This has to come out. This has to come down. The planned have increased steadily, but that is deliberate. This is a summer, and we can begin to undertake the maintenance to ensure that in winter we will be covered. We don't have problems. When you look at the EAF, you will see that in winter it's very high, just reflecting the increasing demand. But from August it has come down. Now, what have been the contributing factors here? Why are we not 75, 78 on the EAF? The first thing is because we are where we are when it comes to coal. Unfortunately, we have had undesired coal quality. And that's a risk that we needed to take. And with that, of course, there are challenges. The recent strike that took place still has an inertia. We haven't totally absolved ourselves from it. It still remains a challenge. But one thing that is important is that this institution has been going through financial challenges in the past 5-6 years or so, including this year where we are. And there are certain decisions that have to be made to ensure the sustainability of this institution. One of the decisions that was made, which even this year we have continued to make, was to keep the maintenance cost constant. If you are looking over the past 5 years, except I think 2017, where we were assisted by National Treasury on recapitalization, we spent about 22 billion on maintenance. The maintenance has been between 18, 19 billion or so. And with that comes recapacities, of course, which some of them we're experiencing now. Outage execution, the overruns. have been a challenge. The ops and maintenance skills needs to be enhanced because we have lost quite a number of people through natural attrition. But in trying to maintain the cost, we have not appointed from outside. That, of course, has its own challenges. So, this maintenance cost that has decreased or has been constant has led to an unsustainable operating model that needs special attention. We do have 9-point recovery plan to deal with this, which is something I'm going to talk about. But before we go there, having highlighted the challenges on the unplanned maintenance, we felt it prudent, important to break it down so that you have a clear understanding of what we are facing. Of course, the first one here at 5.64% is a full load loss. That comes from Duva 4, Krill 2, Grootvlei 2, and the Taba 5. These ones have contributed about 2.5 on unplanned maintenance. Then we have an additional 2.79, which is mainly new builds, the teething problems that we are facing. But over and above that, your normal, ordinary trips that do take place. But you will see that the biggest contributors here is not just full load, it's also partial load at 6.49. So if we can deal with this, which contributes about 12% or so, we will cover a lot of space when it comes to unplanned maintenance. We have outage sleep here at 156. We have boiler tube leaks at about 167, which give you that 15.29 that we spoke about earlier. But once again, I will emphasize, as we go through the presentation, you will see that the emphasis remains here. So, what have we done? As already indicated, on the new plans, we're going through teething problems. We need to fix that. We need to fix full load losses and trips. We need to fix long-term forced outages. The partial losses and boiler tubes. Fixing outage duration and slips. The human capital, which remains very important. But we need to prepare ourselves, and we have already done so, that we're going to use more OCGTs than we had budgeted for earlier. We need to prepare for the rain, especially with the low stockpile in most of our power stations. And we need to fix the coal stockpiles. These are 9 key things that we're spending time on, that we think will turn around this institution in the short to medium term. Now, what have we done? Again, let me start. Those of you that have been here will know that Majuba and Kendall, who are excellent performing power stations now, when they started, they went through the teething problems. And I'm informed that you have to give it about 18, 24 months for the power station to really perform excellently. We have some challenge with the new ones that we have, the new build. Especially Kusile here, which is a bit unreliable. But that was expected. Personally, I was expecting something less than that. Maybe it's because I'm new in the market. But we have taken firm decisions to deal with this. The first one is we're going to increase our spending in addressing known design errors. I'll come back to that. So the issue is, do you want to ensure that your financial performance is acceptable, or do you want to put South Africans first and make the best you can to avoid as much as possible the load shedding? I think South Africa comes first. CAPEX, having indicated that we have budgeted 4.5 billion this year, we have added another 1.5 billion just to deal with these challenges. We have established a SWAT team to guide recovery. Now, these are the guys who sit in Medupi and Kusile. If they pick up anything wrong that is new, let's say in Medupi, they will go to Kusile to make sure it doesn't happen, to prepare for eventuality. The second one is fixing the load losses and trips. That's the 2.79% that we spoke about. The first thing that we need to do, it sounds very easy, on the objective, process action, is just to optimize the procurement processes. Our procurement processes are long, tedious, painful. But it's because of our history. So when the power station manager wants to get something, he has to go through certain processes, committees, comes here to the head office, then we have to take it further up. It's just time consuming. We can make this move faster without compromising on our control systems. But another thing that we're going to do, and we have started, I keep saying we're going to do, we have started, is relinking. The relinking is Eskom is centrally led. And that is, if you're a manager of a power station, we have control of the functional responsibilities. But when it comes to procurement, HR, finance issues, you need to come back to the head office and request whatever you need or what you want to buy. So this process reduces the powers of the power station managers. But importantly and thirdly, it reduces the accountability. Because if I go to you and say, why do you have these problems? And say, no, that is not mine. I'm responsible for this. So the relinking is to take back all the responsibilities, all the RPOs of a power station back to the power station manager. then it becomes responsible. Then it becomes easy to decide, to know which head to chop if we continue to face problems of this sort. The second one is maintenance, online and offline. That is improving execution and effectiveness of maintenance. The MEA, Maintenance Effectiveness Assessments. We've not been strong in that field. Because if we were strong, we would have picked up some of these challenges, both for online and offline. And there are things that look very small, like the spares management optimization. How many? We have 40, eh? Yeah. Yeah, what do you call them? 40, when you're talking about that, where we put the spares. Warehouse. We have 40, yeah?
We actually have about 90.
90.
Throughout the country, but
Yeah.
we've got the 15 power stations as possible.
Fossil food, yeah. We need to be advanced. We need to know which part is where. And we need to optimize that. That looks very small. But for an institution with about 800 billion assets, it becomes a hassle. If we can do those things, as minor as they are, we are comfortable that we can have an impact. But over and above that, this thing of moving away from local purchase orders is taking time. With the proper controls that we have set in, that is what we're going to do. Now, fixing the units that are long-term forced outages. Of course, the first one is Letabo, which unfortunately happened on the 10th of October, a fatality there. There are still investigations that are ongoing here. So the scoping of the higher pressure steam pipe, which was a problem, has not yet been defined. But the planned outage scope it will be executed during the repair time. Initially, we said that the repair time will take about 3 months or so. That has since been reviewed. We are looking roughly at about 6 to 12 months. That is 600 megawatts. So we gave it a rate. It's going to take time. Duva Unit 4, another 6,000 megawatts. It was a turbine tripped on Gerita, a stator earth fault. The duration was just too long, almost the whole year, because of major components that we needed. But we also are of the opinion, as the management, all of us, as the management of Eskom, that it could have been done quicker. Well, now it's done. It's got a green. The third one is Grootvlei Unit 2, the 200 megawatts. We gave it amber because we are expecting it to be back on the 24th of November. Then the last one is Kriel Unit 2, another 600 megawatts. We gave it a rate. We are expecting to bring it back to the fold on the 30th of April 2019. This is conservative. We will put a lot of effort in ensuring that we move this as speedily as possible, irrespective of what it costs us as we move forward. Now, This is a good story that I talked about when I indicated that we are going to increase the use of OTGs. It's because we want to fix the partial load losses. That's about 6% or so. And you will see the effort that we'll undertake. And that is, we're going to have between September 2018 and December 2019, we'll have dealt with 59 outages. We have set up a budget of 11.5 billion from our capex over the next 12 months. And over the next 12 to 24 months, we have set a budget, a capex of about 8.2 billion. This, if done well, will reduce a lot of unplanned maintenance that we are facing. We thought, because we've been trying to understand what exactly are we fixing. And we thought it's important that you understand on your side, where are these problems? So, we are looking at the generation unplanned performance per plant, but importantly, is also persistent. So we know what needs to be done. We had a team that needed to go there and say, we can't continue operating the way we're doing. As you can see, the biggest ones are Arnott, Kendall, and Dover, that contribute 50% on partial load losses. When it comes there to the systems and where exactly are the problems, it's drought plant and gas cleaning, accounting for 55%. If we can focus on this, pay particular attention on this, not that others are not important, then we can have an immediate impact. We can't be able to move the unplanned from the current, the 12, 13%, to about 7, 8% or so. And this is our intention. That's what we want to do. So in a nutshell, the story that we are providing is, yes, we have challenges. Yes, maintenance in the past couple of years, including now, we include ourselves in, has not been at the level where it's supposed to be. Now we're paying a price for that, and we are trying to resuscitate and change that. Now, the fifth fixing is outage duration and sleeps. You might remember that we said it contributes 1.5%. We are in the process of establishing an outage team per power station. And that's important. Not people that will be parked in a corner somewhere that move around, but per power station will have an outage team. And this outage team will be doing, with special resources, of course, at each station, upfront loading and planning, outage readiness, and execution quality. But we'll be working with our own subsidiary, Rotec. And we have agreed that we need to improve the outage performance of Rotec, especially in 4 areas: enabling contracts, personnel skills, spares management, and quality. The spend on OPEX and CAPEX sometimes take time. Sometimes we, as a bureaucratic institution, we have to sign a form, it goes through another committee, another committee, another committee, another committee. We need to speedy this. We need it to be available as soon as possible so that we can get into the problem as soon as possible. Then we have a human capital, the strongest asset that we have. I'm not going to talk at a high level what we're going to do, but I'll concentrate on key decisions affecting the people that will take us out from where we are. Most of the power stations have acting power station managers. That has to stop. We are appointing power station managers. And remember that it's not just the appointment of power station managers, but we'll also give them the power to run the business and be accountable. But what is important, which is not going to be achieved in a short term, but in the medium term we are hoping so, probably by next year, is that each and every power station manager should run its own P&L, profit and loss. That is how you run business. That's what needs to be done. But for you to do so, you should have a full control of the whole scope of the business. We spoke about relinking. That we're going to do. But there is internal recruitment plan that's been initiated because we have different skills scattered around South Africa. That is 279 people that will be moving by January to different business units depending on their skills and where they are needed. We don't have to go outside in some of the decisions that we are making. We just have to think smartly and execute as soon as possible. These are OCTGs. You see the OCGTs where we are. The spend year to date is 193. But we need to use them so that we are able to fix the partial load losses. And to minimize the risk of load shedding. And if, and I hope it doesn't happen, but reduce a degree of load shedding if unavoidable. We have set a new budget. We're looking at about 750 to $1 billion to deal with this. This budget does not include the use of OCGTs to deal with the risk of the rain. You will see how we have used it previously. And you'll see that June was a big challenge. And October too has been a challenge. We need to prepare for the rain. It is easier to prepare for the rain when your stockpiles are sufficient for you to deal with it. But we have gone to each and every power station, even those 5 that have less than 10 days. And we wanted to ascertain as to how we can deal with the challenge they are facing. And the system, or what we have planned, the strategic stockpile decision has been decided in each and every one so that each and every one of them, at minimum, have 3 days strategic stockpile should it rain for 3 days. You know, those that have more days, they would be able to manage. But those that have less, it is important that we do so. But it's not about just having those stockpiles, but it's the procedure as to how and when it should be used. The fuel oil. We need adequate fuel oil stocks. And we are doing that as we are talking now. For combustion to support when coal is wet. That's a backup, and that's what we're doing. The OCTGs, we have already spoken about the budget. If and when it's needed, we're going to spend money. And diesel supply are short. Now, we need to fix the stockpile, especially for those 10 power stations that can't cover 20 days. As we are talking today, as at the end of February, we had 25.6 days. And I'm happy. It's as at 15th of November, my apologies. It was 25.6. We are projecting, if we use the budget and the signed contract, on the signed contract, we hope that by the end of the year, just from the existing and new signed contract, we'll close the year by about 28.2 days. But that's not the only thing we're doing. We'll explain further what is it that we're trying to do to deal with this issue. And we are hoping and expected, holding all other things constant, also the initiatives that we are now undertaking. It's expected that we will reach the required level between September 2019 and February 2020. But we can move quicker, and we'll explain what are we planning. Well, this lists those stations that are impacted. And at the back of our minds, we should always, always remember that the biggest risk we are facing, over and above the fact that we don't have adequate coal, is rain. And I've explained what we are trying to do with it. You know, this slide is loaded. It's got a lot of things. What is it trying to do? It tries to explain why are we where we are. Allow me to explain it the way I understand, which makes it much simpler for you to understand. Up until October last year, the stockpile was increasing. We had 42 days stockpile, but by November, it started decreasing. The question is why? Well, we needed to deal with those inflated Tegeta numbers. That's the first thing. But the second thing is that Tegeta company that was supposed to supply 400 tons, those were reduced to 200. So you begin to see by November, the stockpiles start decreasing. And of course, management made the right decision. They then went to the National Treasury and they request an urgent stock procurement approval. But because of the state of affairs at Eskom at that time, National Treasury had questions, corporate governance issues. It didn't come immediately. The new board was appointed on the 20th of January, and thereafter by February, National Treasury approved. that special or agent stock procurement. We started the process. But Tegeta businesses, all three of them in February, went to the business rescue. And amidst that environment, as we are facing those challenges, the truth is that the suppliers that we had contracted could not supply the required coal. And on the other side, we had a huge challenge in that as Eskom we had not invested on cost plus mines. So the supply from cost plus mines decreased by about 6 million. Now, the process of procuring coal at minimum takes about a year. You have to go to Treasury, you have to go through the committees, need approval, you have to go back to the board. So, the combination of this, of the suppliers that are not meeting the target, of the Tegeta issue, of cost plus mines, all of them contributed. And our own process of acquiring coal or procuring coal. This is where we are. Because the first time National Treasury approved that we go source the coal, although it had conditions, it said, one, we have to go to those that are contracted. If you don't get it, two, you then have to go to those that have been shortlisted. And if you don't get it, open it up in the market. That's a long process. And we are competing against the global market now. And if the global market puts the price of coal at about $110 per ton, and we are negotiating for 350, 400 or so, the mine companies will have to decide who to choose from. So that is why I was highlighting that the current problems that we are facing, while they're inherent in nature, but we ourselves, in one way or the other, have contributed to some of the challenges. This just tries to explain what I've explained at a high level. Starting with the levels until October 17, the Majuba Tutuga fell below Eskom, total system stock 40 days, declining in November 17. What did we do? Then all of a sudden, 2018, we get 8.3 million required and 12 million contracted and supplied. 6 million cost plus mines under supply. But we had an increased ban on power stations with low stock levels. So it is the culmination of all these things. I can go through and explain. That brought us to this level. And I think my story is easier to follow than this. But there's also another challenge. That there's limited investment in opening new mines. So when the global market is doing so well, and we are negotiating at about 30%, 40% of what they're getting in the market, and there's no new investment coming in, we are bound to have challenges. We realize that we need to engage with the mining companies, coal companies differently. It should not just be about business, where I write a letter, we need 1 million, do you have 2 million tons we want to buy? We need a direct engagement. And to some we need to apologize, because some of the decisions that we made spoiled the relationship. And we have done so. And we have seen those that were saying they're not willing to engage with us anymore because of loss of trust coming back. Not just coming back, reviewing their own price. Because at the end of the day, we're all South Africans, and what is good for Eskom is good for South Africa, and is good for South Africans. So the situation will improve. But not now. It's going to take time. So, what have we done since we've been here? Yes, we have signed 22 new coal contracts. That gives you 15.8 million tons. The total contracted volume is 73 million. We need 116 million tons per annum. It's going to be a journey. But there are additional contracts in the pipeline. And they are at the advanced stage. There's a limited transfer from Medupi coal by road. But what is important is 1.4 million from December, my apologies, will come through rail. It will make a great impact. Now, just looking at what we have done, so what will be the impact? The impact is what I've been talking about. This is November. Then it started coming down up until it touched 24 days, 3. Now we've picked up to 25.6. If we do the things that I've listed, we'll close the year on 28 days, 28.2. And by March 20, will be 51 days. But we felt there are things that can be done that can have an immediate impact. So what did we do? We fast-tracked the recovery. We went to the National Treasury. We requested that we be allowed to buy that 4 million immediate supply. And I'm happy to say out of this 4 million, we have secured about 1.1. I think within a short space of time. How many weeks? Yeah. We're already on 1.1. We are confident that we'll achieve this. If we acquire this 4 million, it changes the scope. Because all of a sudden, we don't move through here, but you move through here. And by the end of this financial year, we'll have covered 36 days. This is ideal to us. And we'll try our level best to achieve it. Now, I sometimes spend my time in the office. And the chief operating officer has to go out there and deal with these issues. That's ops. He has to make sure that we have sufficient coal. He has to deal with the leaks. He has to ensure that we enhance our generation. So the conclusion, because it's him who will be there, we thought it prudent that he just conclude on the about 2 or 3 slides that are remaining.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah. Thanks.
Good morning. Good morning. Just a little bit on the, can you hear me? Good enough. We went to, because of the situation that we have that's facing us on the coal challenge, we went and we developed a long-term coal strategy. So we spent quite a lot of quality time on that. So we developed a strategy. We took it to Exco as well as to our board. And some of the important issues that we will be focusing on to ensure long-term coal sustainability are the following. So we will extend our existing cost-plus contracts. So there will be negotiations to extend those. We are in the process now of setting aside some capex to invest again in cost-plus mines to ensure that sustainability. Where we have at this point in time the long-term fixed contracts, it is to continue with those and to negotiate for extensions on those as well. Then we will not stop. As a matter of fact, we are in the process in the tender phase, that we are looking at more open tender contracts for coal. And then the Chief has spoken a little bit about the coal that we're moving from Medupi down to Mpumalanga. So there's an active and a dedicated plan to take the trucks off the road wherever possible. We will be setting some very strict targets to our primary energy division, to take as far as possible the trucks off the road. So those are some of the things that we will be focusing on and concentrating on in terms of ensure sustainability of coal. The Chief has spoken quite a lot about this 9-point recovery plan that we have developed, but more importantly, we have developed, but we're in the process of implementing that. So in my office, myself specifically, I'm focusing a lot on this recovery plan. And we'll be tracking that, and in my next slide I will demonstrate to you in more detail. However, to get to the 75% energy availability factor and above, we set ourselves 5 key objectives to be achieved in the next 1 year. So the intention is, and we will definitely work extremely hard to achieve these. So the objectives we set ourselves is, number 1, is to have a robust emergency procurement process. To wait a year to place contracts is in the environment that we are now is not desirable. So we're putting a lot of emphasis together with our procurement colleagues to put this robust process in place, which will then obviously procure coal as well as specifically for maintenance as well. It's no use you take a few months just to get spares. So we're really looking on how to do it ethically, obviously, and get the spares in our warehouses. The Chief has spoken about some of our units, Duva 4, Kriel 2, Grootvrei 2, as well as Letaba 5, to get those units back as soon as possible. Is really to have a dedicated team that will track the delivery of those units that is out at this point in time. Then the issue of the full load losses. We have these unnecessary and unplanned trips. To understand why, I believe we'll deal with that successfully in that maintenance plan that was given to you, that we intend to have at least 59 maintenance schedule in the year that is coming. So it's to deal with that issue, and then obviously to deal with the issue of the partial load losses. On average, we're running about 3.6 thousand megawatts, and for those of you that know, it's a full 6-pack power station that we are losing at this point in time because of the partial load losses. So there will be, we believe that will be sorted out very successfully. And then obviously the critical vacancies. If you take a power plant, it is a big piece of machine. It is, so we need people that is very skilled, very dedicated. So we have a leadership team for each and every power station that is really dedicated to deliver the megawatts that we require them to deliver and to make that positive impact on the economy. So that is a big focus for us, together with my colleague from HR. And then the Chief has spoken a lot about to get the coal stock levels to where it's supposed to be. I think I'd like to end then just to give you this plan that we have, based on all the things that we've talked about today. If you look at the green line, that's obviously what we'd like to achieve. So that is, all our plans are in place and it's working perfect. But as we know, we're not in a perfect world, and problems will happen. So we aim in between. Obviously, our target is for the green line, but we are trying absolutely not to go past the green, after the red line. So we want to achieve a performance between the red and the green line. So that tells you we still foresee in the next few months that we'll have a deterioration on our EAF for all the reasons that we've given you. However, we are working now, dedicated teams, to work on the recovery plan, and we see that by the end of the financial year we'll start seeing a change, and then significantly have an improvement to the 75 in a year's time, and then to take it up to the 78 and the 80 that we're really planning for. This recovery plan is a dedicated focus of myself and the Group Executive of Generation, and this will be tracked on a weekly basis. So the assurance is given that we have plans in place, we're working at the plans, and this is what we see will happen in the future. Is it quick enough? No, maybe it's not, but we believe this is a realistic plan, and this is what we believe we can commit ourselves. With that, thank you, Master of Ceremonies. That is basically our formal presentation, so thank you.
Of course, ladies and gentlemen, now you will have Kuluk to come up to deal with the questions and answers, but just quickly to introduce to you our executives that are going to assist in responding to questions. You have John Oberholzer, who is our Chief Operating Officer. That was a way of introducing him here, and he just came into the fire and assisting our Chief Executive Officer. It has been tough for both of them the whole year here. So, and we have Willie Majola there, and then Andrew Etzinger, and then Dan Mashiko. Sitting down, it's will also assist in answering questions. We have Mongesi Ntsokolo. Those are the guys that are going to answer questions. Of course, maybe from day to day, if we have had questions about persons, because we spoke a lot about human resources and appointment. Elsie Pule is here too, to come, and of course, majestically walking in, ladies and gentlemen, at the question time. Welcome, Skonati. Hands for him, ladies and gentlemen. You just come for questions. You can't question, you don't know the presentation. How are you going to ask questions? Oh, you had it, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, Kulu, please, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. So we will start with maybe the password for the Wi-Fi for those who are using it. The username is media, small letters, and the same for password. Is it password? Yeah, password. Password and username, same word, which is media, small letters. So yeah, it's your opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to get clarity or to maybe even comment. You never know. Yeah, let's start with. I'll start here with Charlotte at the front, and then I'll take Roger, and then I'll take 4 questions at a go. So if I'm not taking you now, it's going to be the next round. So Charlotte, Roger, Terence, and then I'll also do Amina. So those will be the first ones to start with, and then we'll do the other rounds. So let's start with Charlotte.
It's Charlotte Matthews from Mining MX. Are you going to insist on 51% black ownership from your coal mine suppliers? And secondly, what happened to those plans that were mentioned several years ago about converting your OCGT stations to cheaper dual cycle or gas-fired?
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Just behind you, Roger.
Good morning. It's Roger Lilly from EE Publishers. I've got some questions from my colleague Chris Yelland, who sends his apologies. He can't be here. He's had a death in the family. So just let me read this to you. He says, firstly, he wishes to applaud Eskom for holding quarterly media briefings like this and for sharing information on the general power supply status to keep us up to date on the broad risks facing electricity supply in South Africa and what Eskom is doing to mitigate these risks. However, he has repeatedly raised the issue of the completely inadequate data provided by Eskom on an ongoing basis in between media briefings such as these. Sadly, formal communications and requests to Eskom in this regard are being ignored, and he would therefore like to raise the matter publicly. To its credit, and after being removed, having removed public viewing by Brian Molefe and Matshela Koko, the new Eskom management team has reinstated the clunky old weekly generation system status reports on its website. However, this has been done in a way that makes the information almost inaccessible to all but the most determined of analysts. The information system, as well as the actual data provided, is outdated, limited, and woefully inadequate, lacking in transparency and detail, and completely out of step with international best practice. He therefore suggests the following 3 steps. Can an EAF data be made in a more granular detail, for example, by each power station and for each unit within the power station? Can it show the split between planned capacity load factor and unplanned capacity load factors for the whole fleet, and also in a more granular detail? And also, can the base megawatt be used in the above metrics, which is particularly relevant these days as new generation units come into service and old units retire from service into cold reserve? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roger, and thank you so much for raising those questions, because I also wanted to ask, if possible at all, maybe just to limit yourself to 3 questions at a go. We'll have more rounds. The executives are here for at least an hour, so you'll have more than enough time to answer to ask all your questions. Terence?
Yes, in terms of the plans outlined, in terms of your diesel spend rising to around R1 billion this year, if you compare that to what NERSA has approved for the year, can you tell us what the gap would be? Similarly, with the coal procurement plans, what the gap would be and how you plan to recoup the R1 billion that you now plan to spend on diesel this year. What is the gap there between that level of expenditure and what was approved by the regulator for this year? And similarly, could you do a similar analysis for the coal spend, given that you're going to be spending more on coal probably than what was approved, and how you plan to recoup that? Secondly, on the power station management recruitment, how many power station managers are currently acting, and how many do you have to convert into permanent, and what time frame are you looking at for that? And when will these power station managers have this full power that you're talking about? And what are the mitigating actions that you're putting in place, given the history of corruption, but particularly in the procurement space? What are you doing specifically to mitigate the risk of this more decentralized procurement power? Thirdly, on the coal, the 4 million tons, what is the average cost per ton of that 4 million tons versus that more gradual build-up cost per ton? So you had a very steep build-up with the 4 million tons versus this more gradual build-up to the stock levels. What is the gap differential, and how will you pay for that? And how will you treat these 3 days of strategic stock differently from the rest of the stock? How will they be treated? How will they be safeguarded from the rains versus your normal stock treatment? And then finally, how much in total will you be moving from Medupi down to the Mpumalanga power stations? Which power stations will receive them? And what is the breakdown between road and rail?
Thank you, Terence. Amina?
Amina Akram, SABC, the business desk. Very quickly, I just have about 3 questions or 2. Just give us an update on the allegations of the kickbacks regarding the coal supply. And then just be realistic to us in terms of how much coal is underground, or your estimated number. Like, are we done? Are you looking at alternatives? And then basically, I just want clarity so that our listeners and our viewers can understand this. Are you saying to the South African citizens that there will be blackouts during the festive season?
Thank you, Amina. Mr. Hadebe and your team, if you can answer from where you are, because the information I got from the camera people is that it's better so that they can strain their cameras that side. Mr. Hadebe?
My colleagues will take some of them. I will start with the ones coming from Charlotte. Are we going to insist on 51%? Let me give a story, you know. If you're looking at the procurement and the orders that have been given by Eskom, 72% of the deals have been given to non-black owned businesses. That is less than 51%. That's the first thing. The second thing is our decisions are informed by the PPPFA and the PFMA, and they stipulated what we should be following. I think the 51% black owned should have been an aspiration of some sort that had been put forth. But we would be pursuing and taking decisions informed by PPPFA and the PFMA. And in fact, as I've already indicated, if you are looking at the numbers, they do point to that. Then there's a story on the sea, on the gas and what was, yeah.
Terence, in terms of the use of diesel, the budget for this year is 660 million rand. I think just to interpret that slide, what we're looking at is the potential additional use of an additional 750 to 1 billion rand. That is what we are preparing for. Obviously, we would want to minimize that, and that depends on the performance of the plant. But just as a contingency, that is what we are handling. Your question around the strategic stockpiles and what makes a difference. The 3-day strategic stock is kept close to the station and it's compacted. So it's protected against the rain. We've got better runoff of rainwater should that occur. And once again, in terms of the big risk of coal getting wet during the handling process, we're minimizing that by putting it at the station. The number of power station managers acting at the moment, of the 15 coal-fired power stations, 7 are acting. The majority of those are unfortunately tied up in forensic investigations, both by Eskom's own investigative unit, but also by the state institutions looking into the issues which I think we're all very familiar with. So we would want to obviously get the power stations manned by full-time general managers as soon as possible, and we're pushing towards that. I meet with our forensics department basically every day now to push that, to expedite the investigations, take them through the necessary process, take the necessary steps to replace general managers that need to be replaced. In terms of the coal, Dan, will you talk to the coal?
perhaps while you're getting ready, you also had a question on who's going to authorize the usage of the strategic stock. That will be from the Chief Operating Officer or his designate, but at this point in time, the Chief Operating Officer.
Yeah, and if I can also then answer the question with regard to the open cycle gas turbines, there was a question about the conversion from diesel to gas as the fuel. Well, in order to do the conversion, obviously, there is a portion that requires an outage of the OCGT, and there's also a portion that does not require an outage. So where the outages were required, we actually took the opportunity to do the conversion. So that conversion is ready, so that you know that the outage work is actually behind us. So what is still outstanding now is actually the balance of plant, which actually does not require outages. So this issue is actually on the agenda for the next EXCO, which is part of the overall gas strategy of Eskom, which is being reviewed. So the part that requires outages is done. The part that does not require outages is going to go back to EXCO on, I think, on Tuesday next week as part of the overall gas strategy of Eskom. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Let me start with the 4 million tons of urgent coal procurement. As mentioned by the GCE, we've only secured 1.1 million tons, and that 1.1 million tons is coming through existing contracts and at existing prices. The other offers that are on the table, we still have to engage, like a National Treasury on the process, like they've been identified, it's more than 35 million tons, they vary. Majority of them are within, like our 2016 mandates and in line with the current, contracts that we are, like we are currently signing, and there are those that are basically outside, the mark, which still need to be negotiated. So the 2.9 million tons is not firm at this point in time, has not been negotiated. We need to sort out, the process, and then we can engage, negotiate, and conclude the contract. And the offers are obviously to get the coal to start moving on the 1st of December or earlier if we are quite successful. Then there was a question on how much coal we're going to move from Medupi. We've got in excess of 12 million tons sitting currently at Medupi, and the coal is sitting on our future ash dams. The coal has to move at some point. We've tried actually since 2016 to move the coal. The intention is to move all the coal because Medupi and Matimba in Lephalale are fully served, like from their tight colliery. So the rate, it will be 1.4, like a million tons, per annum, and I think we've got board approval basically in our contract with Transnet basically to move, like the entire volume. So it will depend on the capacity, like the Transnet, will be able to move the coal and the constraints, that are currently on the line here. But the intention is to move the entire volume, but it will be on average 1.7 million tons per annum. Okay, the issue on kickbacks that came up, I think, also in the, in one of the interviews with, I think it was on 702. I think for us, the important part, I think, as mentioned, is that the information has to come forward. And I think through our legal and, assurance and forensic, that there has to be detailed, a discussion. So if the information comes to me, I have to obviously forward it, to the relevant, authorities, because it's in my space. I can't investigate my own area. But I think there is a need, for that to happen, to be part of the entire, cleanup here. Okay, then there was a question that I need to be clarified in terms of how much coal is currently underground. So I'm not sure whether we're talking coal that is currently on the ground, still to be mined, or we're talking about stockpile.
I'm talking about coal that's supposed to be mined. Do you have an idea?
Okay. I think if you're asking a global question, with regards to the amount of, coal that is available, coal reserves, in the country, I think there is adequate coal. We've done a study with the Council of Natural Geosciences. There's in excess of, call it 150 years supply of coal to supply, the domestic market and also, the export market and so on. If I come back closer to home, I think there was mention of the cost plus extensions, fixed price extensions. I think there is adequate coal. The coal is on the ground. and it's adjacent to the power stations. I mean, some of the stations have got more coal than what will be required. You know, if I pick up maybe Matla, for example, on the ground, they probably have 200 more tons additional over and above what Matla requires until end of station life in 2033 to 2023. So there is adequate coal. And lastly, the largest coal reserves. Yeah. The largest remaining coal reserves in the country are basically in the Waterberg. So I think there will be a time in future when coal is still relevant that you will see migration more and more to the Waterberg. Yeah.
I want to highlight with regard to the availability of coal. If you have read the IRP 2010 to 2030, it alluded and it does indicate that by 2030, coal will make roughly about 60% of the supply, and that will decrease further by 2050 to something like 50 or 40 or so. So if we are to implement the IRP, it seems as if the coal usage will change drastically.
There was a question, Roger, the Chris Yerant question on more detailed and more frequent information. Are we open to that? I personally undertake that I will make contact with Chris to understand his requirements, and then we will deal with that. So.
And then there was a question on blackouts. Will there be blackouts during the festive season? Let me first give a short answer. The short answer is there will be no blackouts during the festive season. But the risk of rotational load shedding is high. Then I'm going to give a long answer. Because these are technical terms with specific meanings. You know, like lawyers, they've got specific terms. A blackout means that we've basically lost all generation in the country because of whatever reasons. So no power station is generating. That's what a blackout simplistically means. And we're not talking about that. And of course, if you've got a blackout, it's a catastrophe. Estimates that have been given by some people said it would probably take 2 weeks, at least, before you restore the whole country. And of course, under the National Disaster Management Act, these issues are addressed and to say how do you restore the system. So if you are saying blackouts, festive season, the answer is no. But we did say that the risk of rotational load shedding is high, where obviously, as you know, as the name says, you are not shedding the whole country at a time. You shed one portion, then they come back, and another one comes back. And the reason really why we said, and it was actually covered in the presentation as well, I think, you know, if you actually look at the energy availability factor for the month now, month to date, not for the full year to date, we are sitting currently at 66.5%, which is quite low. We have had occasions, so those are the indicators of load shedding. You know, when the availability at a particular point, not for the full year, at a particular point, like the month to date, 66.5%. We are using OCGTs very high. There was a day where we actually used all 20 OCGTs between the Eskom OCGTs as well as the IPP OCGTs. The usage of the interruptibles is increasing. We are finding ourselves as well the usage of the virtual power stations also increasing. So even from a plant performance point of view, the risk of load shedding is increasing. And then a separate issue which has been highlighted as well in Pagamani's presentation, we've got 5 stations where the coal stock days are below 5, and of course the mitigation plans were shared, but the risk still remains that if it rains very, very heavily, you know, during the December-January period, the risk of load shedding is high. So in short, let me go back to where I started. If you're talking about blackouts, the answer is no. If you're talking about rotational load shedding, the risk is high. Thank you.
Just as a supplement to Willie Majola's response, just to assure everyone again that load shedding, which is the rotational load shedding, is always used as a last resort. After all our economical solutions have been deployed. Those will be interruptibility of customers, where our contracts allows us to interrupt certain customers. Those would be after we've used demand side reduction, where we pay certain customers to actually reduce their load during peaks or during constrained periods. And those will also be after we've used all our diesel generation, which is more expensive than our traditional generation. The point I'm making is we first look at all possible options to avoid interrupting customers, because our mandate as Eskom is to satisfy the demand of the customers. So it's always after everything has been evaluated, and then we end up with a load shedding. And lastly, we do this in consultation with all our customers. Right now, we are going through exercises where we're communicating with our domestic customers, with our municipalities to check their readiness, and also with our key customers, those that can do certain things to prepare for that eventuality, so that there's no surprises when we actually come to that, including load shedding, rotational systems, and so on. So we try and make sure that the country is ready and that we can deal with that eventuality when it actually arrives.
I think there was a question on relinking. This is something that we still have to finalize with the trade unions, and it's important that we highlight that. But having said so, it's critical and important that we understand that the problem of corruption at Eskom has a tendency of having very wide tentacles. It's not one person sitting in a corner somewhere that gets corrupt, then gets money. Most of the time, it's a collection of people in the committee that decide what needs to be done, how it should be done. Then you ended up having that. But some of those things have happened, and if you go back to most of the investigations that one have had a privilege of looking into, it's about people, leadership, instructing people to take certain decisions, and people take those decisions because they were scared. They are not justifying. If you do that, you have to pay the price. And the majority of the people that had to be exited, when you listen to their story, it's very similar. I was instructed to do so, but you have signed. But the main thing is then to take the power from the leadership, whether from the ExCo or from middle management, and ensure that the people that are working in Eskom have the energy, the power, and the will to whistleblow when things of this sort happen. And we are beginning to see that. I can give you the numbers. The investigations that have been carried over, just in the past 9 months, it's about 1,029, of which out of that about 79 people were exited, and roughly about 250, 260 have been suspended without pay. What we are seeing is that people are using the whistleblowing, and they trust in that. And that is very, very good, because when we do so, then it becomes very, very difficult for people to impose their will. Let me give you the numbers. The numbers of the cases, 1,049, of which 822 have been finalized, resulting in 97 employee exits. And for an institution like us, that's been an achievement. But over and above that, roughly about 250 people have been suspended without pay. This is still, I'm not saying this is the end of a road, but it's a journey that we still have to travel. And the mere fact that people are using that whistleblowing, because we had a challenge earlier, people were saying they don't trust it. It's a big, big plus for us in dealing with corruption. Do we still have corruption in Eskom? Probably, yes. Is it $1 billion that will have to disappear because a board member, a senior management, and another executive have agreed on something? that will be very difficult because we have controls. But can I, sitting in a corner somewhere, talk to a driver who's a truck driver who has to deliver coal and convince him that maybe if he doesn't deliver the full amount, then we can share the spoils? I think that is still happening, but we are tightening the controls. So when we begin to talk about this relinking, the idea of relinking that we have to finalize with the trade unions, it is based on the assumption that the control systems around it are so powerful, so strong, that it makes it very difficult for people to create a network, the tentacles that will be able to succeed. But yes, we still have corruption. Yes, when you read some of the reports that we are getting, we do get the stories that are disappointing. And we learn along the way how we tighten the controls over and over again. At some stage, for the 8,000 people, we want to be a normal entity where corruption is so rare, so few, that if it happens, everyone in the company knows about it. We haven't reached that stage. But we have reached a stage where the corporate governance has been enhanced and improved. And in fact, we have a good story to tell. If you had read the report that was written by Fitch, which highlighted, that moved us from negative watch because we're supposed to be downgraded. And it said, yes, there are quite a number of things that have happened, but it highlighted two main things why we had to move from that negative watch. It had highlighted the improving corporate governance, and it highlighted the improving liquidity. And it felt that then we can retain the BB- rating that we're having. So we are progressing. Then this proposed move is a step in the right direction. Accountability is important because if there's corruption at a power station, then the head of the power station or the manager of the power station should take full accountability. Can't transfer it to anyone else.
Thank you. We are progressing. We'll take another round. This time around, I'm going to go this way. Angela, if you don't mind, I'll start with Sikonati and then come this way. So I'll do Sikonati, and then I'll take Angelo, and then I'll take Ted Blom at the back, and then I'll take Alex. I'll stop here for now, and then we will take another round. Sikonati.
Congratulations, First Ladies on your job so far. And there's certainly less potential corruption in the room. And we're making progress. I have questions. Unfortunately, more than two, so you may have to come back. You have not said a thing in your presentation, Pagamani, about cash. Does Eskom have money in the bank, and how much is it, and how much is it versus relative to requirements? You have said not so long ago that one of the problems of this coal supply issue has been the availability of cash. Do you have money relative to the needs? One. Two, we're all talking about plans to recover the stockpiles.
No one is giving us a deadline. This thing has been going on for 2 years now. When will we not hear about shortages of coal again? Give us a deadline. By this date, there will be no coal shortages. And tell us what has happened to those people responsible for the current state of affairs in terms of coal supply. That you are owed by municipalities 17 billion rand. We all know that is a political question, but you are here to technically manage the company. What are you doing to recover the 17 billion rand? Don't tell me about the threats that Eskom has been making for years and not actually cutting off the people that have not been paying. When are we getting the money in from those municipalities that are not paying for coal? Fourth question.
what caused that blast at the Medupi power station? The blast about a month ago, there was an explosion.
Litau.
At Litau, yes. There was also another accident at Kusile, am I correct? There was an explosion there too. How did that affect the build of the station? And yes, Jan? The fire. Yes. How did that, what happened there? And how did the damage affect the progress on the building of the power station? While we are at it, please give us the cost update for the new build program. I have quite a few more, but we'll hold it here for now.
Thank you. Angela?
It's Angelo Coppola from China Global Television. CEO, at the beginning of your presentation, you talked about allocating 1.5 billion more capex to the 4.5 allocated to address what you called known design errors at new builds. When did these errors come to light? Why are you acting on them now? And does this announcement have anything to do with the suspension you've just announced of Mr. Masangu?
Thank you, Angelo. At the back, take it to, Ted?
Morning. My first question relates to the EIF. When I was at the last presentation, we had Mr. Governor promise us that the EIF was heading well on its way to over 80%. Today I hear it's languishing around 66%. It's one hell of a difference in my language. The second thing is we're now at the third coal crisis of this year, if I'm correct. And in my prognosis, this coal crisis is going to carry on until a new mine is built, or more mines, the 20 mines plus that Mr. Damas promised this country are built. I don't see any indication on your slides that any steps have been taken to commission new coal mines to sort out the coal fleet for the rest of their lives. And the third thing is, in the presentation, we had several billions tossed around, including the 1.6 to fix up design errors, but also more billions to improve the maintenance and reliability of the plant. You refer to them as capex. I find it difficult to categorize maintenance issues as capex. So can you please correct me as to whether my hearing is bad or your definitions are bad? I think that's the three questions I need to have answered, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. And then we'll take Alex.
Hi, Alex Winning from Reuters News Agency. I just have a clarification where you said that you're urgently procuring 4 million tons of coal to return the coal stockpiles to the required level by the end of March. Are you referring to the 5 stations that have below 10, or are you referring to the 10 stations that have below 20 days of stock? And the second question is, you said that your long-term coal strategy had been revised so that you will prioritize long-term fixed-price contracts and also that you will reinvest in cost-plus mines. Do you have an estimate for the investment that Eskom plans in cost-plus mines over any reasonable time frame? Have you done some calculations? Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. We will take those ones. I see.
Thanks, Kudu. I will take the first one from Sikonati, and that is, does Eskom have money? Eskom had a borrowing requirement of 72 billion this year, of which a funding of about 57 billion has been raised. We are left with the remaining funding of roughly about 20 billion, 22 billion or so. And the last time I checked our balances, we had about 6 billion in our pocket, so we are sitting comfortable. And as I'm talking to you now, there are discussions with a number of investors, both domestic and foreign, to conclude the funding as soon as possible. We hope that by December, that transaction, mid-December, will have been concluded. So the financial position of Eskom is much, much better than how it has been before. Yes. The need we have, I would say actually it's just the CFO is not here. I would say it's about 3.5 billion the need. We have more in the meantime, in the short to medium. But, so.
How did that drop 10 times from 20 billion rand cash capital requirements to 3? And now you have 6?
No, I'm looking at the short term. I'm looking at what is happening right at this moment in time.
My question is,
yeah.
Eskom needs to have a minimum amount of cash in the bank.
Yes.
In the past, that had to be 20 billion rand plus.
Yeah.
Today, you have, let's take the higher figure, 7 billion rand.
Yeah.
Has that working capital requirement be revised downwards to what? And what was eliminated in order to get to those numbers? What did you have to sacrifice?
That is what I'm trying to explain to you. Initially, Eskom was supposed to have a minimum cash balance of 20 billion. We reviewed that. Oh, sorry. I'm saying that, yes, you are right. Before, the bank used to have about 20 billion cash balances. That's a minimum it needed. But that was when there was huge liquidity. We did our numbers and we came to a conclusion that if Eskom has 5 billion over the next 2 years at any moment in time, looking at the borrowing and the cash flow requirement, it can still operate. We further said that if we get anything on our cash that is 20 billion or above 20 billion, instead of keeping it as cash, we'll use it for debt. So we have reviewed our strategy. That is why I'm saying at 7 billion cash as we are talking now, we are comfortable. But as we move forth, as I've already indicated, that there's still a need for 20 billion by the last quarter of the financial year. So we are covered.
How much do you burn cash per month?
Wow, the CFO is, I think, yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
I can't give necessarily the specifics, but I think to give assurance. Chair, I can't give the specifics of the specific amount, but we do have a cash lab process which allows us to match our outflows and our inflows. So the reason why the CE is saying we've reviewed it, it's because on that basis, so on a month-to-month basis and even more frequently within our treasury team, they're able to actually continuously look at the inflows versus the outflows. Thanks, Chair. I don't think I can give that specific, Chair.
Yeah. Through, yeah, see, and Huma, maybe, I don't know, maybe after the session you could have a separate chat with Sikwanati just to clarify some of those questions.
Yeah. All right.
We'll provide the answers. We'll talk to the cash people, the finance people. Apologies. Because he was supposed to come, and unfortunately there's something that turned up where Eskom should be in, and the CFO had to go there. He was coming here.
So there's no CFO, there's no treasurer? And Eskom burns cash at a rate of 10 billion rand a month.
So Konati, could I answer your question later? I'm not having the answers now because the people that will have answered to respond.
You don't have the chief financial officer, you don't have the treasurer in the room.
No, I'm saying, yes, I'm saying it's because of an agent event that took place that forced both of them not to attend? Because you must know by now that these two individuals attend all these meetings. So they needed to go there to deal with the issue, and unfortunately, yeah.
And it turns out you don't have enough cash in the bank.
No. Where are you getting that? I gave you the figures. I told you, the days of holding a cash of 20 billion, because it's very costly, are long gone. The liquidity in South African bond market has depreciated from the high of 16 trillion to a low of about 9 trillion or so. And thirdly, the willingness of investors to hold their bond, the cost that's why you are able to do so over a long term, has diminished, and the average bond in South Africa is 3 to 4 years. And for us, because we still are building credibility, our holding, at least now, has increased from the low of 2-3 months, has gone to about 12 months to 2 years. And that's an advantage. So if we are able to raise 2 billion, but over and above that, the money that's been coming from outside, from the DFIs, in fact, has had an average maturity of about 12, 13 years. So we are covered. And in fact, let me extend and tell you that next year, our opening balances will start with about 34 billion, we'll start with 22 billion funding for the following year if we conclude the whole borrowing. The financial situation and environment of Eskom, as we are talking now, is far better than the past 3-4 years or so. I don't understand why you think we are in financial trouble.
No, I don't think so. I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
How much does Eskom burn in cash per month? A year ago, that was 10 billion rand.
No. You know what? We will need a burn of 20 that is left. I'll tell you, 7. Let me calculate. We'll need about 3 billion burn a month. I've just take your 20, the 20 billion that is remaining of funding plus the 7 that we have now. Then you calculate roughly how much do we need, because all this will cover the rest of the year. That's an answer.
Yes.
Now you want me to use the maths? Yeah, but that is what we have.
Yeah.
And you can calculate it, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I was going to say, Sikonati, if you have any additional ones, maybe after this session we can have a little chat, then we'll take it from there. Otherwise,
No.
I've been standing here, I might eat it.
Sorry, Kula. I did the numbers. I told him what is left, what we have, and I calculated the months. That's the story you wanted. I think I've given you the answer.
All right.
Yeah.
I will be dealing with some of your questions, if I may. Yes, we had the incident at Letabo 5, where we had between the boiler and the turbine one of the main steam pipes that ruptured. The investigation at this point in time is still ongoing, so we're waiting for the final report. So that's where we're standing with that incident. Then the question you asked at Kusile, where we had the fire. The investigation has been concluded. Perhaps what I need to say, the pictures that was on social media was a bit misleading, because it looked like the whole place was on fire, but actually it was only the lights of the boiler at the back that was burning. So it actually, there was a bit of smoke in front, and then it looked like it was a fire. So there was definitely a fire. The fire was in one of the fabric filter cells. So it was contained to within one cell. So the bags inside actually caught light. It was one of the contractors that did some welding. I do not want to comment at this point in time on the preventative, what they had to prevent, to not cause a fire. So that is ongoing. So the result is clear. Of the investigation, the result is clear. It was a fire. It was done. It was caused because of welding. The fabric filter bags then caught fire. It was burned, and it was only contained within in one cell. Fortunately, no structural damage. There is insurance claims at this point in time, and no negative impact on the program, to answer that question. Then you had a question on the cost of what is the envisaged cost at this point in time, specifically Medupi and Kusile. Medupi, it is 135 billion. So that is what we envisage the final cost would be. However, we are in the process. We've got quite a lot of claims, so there's a lot of work that is currently taking place, and we still need to execute some capital work. But the estimate at this point in time, the best that we have and the most accurate we have is 135. On Kusile's side, it's 157.5. So that is the envisaged cost now for Kusile. Also the same. Still a lot to be invested, spent on capital work. And there are quite a lot of claims as well. So, but this is the best accurate estimate that we have, 157.5 billion.
Kusile, and we are left with about on Medupi, and we are left with about 26 billion more on Kusile. So we are coming to an end. What happened to the coal culprits? We are working with SIU. We are also part of the Zondo Commission and the NPA. Those are those are the agencies that will bring about the prosecution of the individuals. We've provided all the information, and we've released about 4 or 5 people that were involved in coal. So we have covered our role. It's up to other government agencies now to play their role. What is going on with municipalities? The issue of municipalities, we've come to a conclusion, is not the solution that can only come from Eskom. And accordingly, like I said last time, it has been elevated to 5 ministers. It's a committee, inter-ministerial task team, which is chaired by Minister of Kokda, the Minister of Finance, Minister of DPE, Minister of Water Affairs and Kokda. They are trying to find a solution on that as to how they can help us.
Sorry, just while you're getting rhetoric, we actually on end of October, 18 billion. You said 17, so it's 18.
Angela, there was a 1.5 billion. Why am I acting on this? Could you elaborate?
It's really just about the allocation. You're allocating an extra 1.5 billion to correcting those design errors at the new builds. Why are you doing it now? And is it linked in any way to the suspension of Mr. Masengo?
No, it's got nothing to do with that. You know, this goes back to the issue of maintenance and what we need to do. You know, we realized, we came to a conclusion that our own capex needs to be increased if we are to meet the targets we're talking about now. Otherwise, we'll have been facing challenges. But it's got nothing to do with Mr. Masango.
So these are design errors that you're correcting or maintenance?
It is basically a combination of both. So when we started the program 10 years ago, for whatever reason, the designs were not 100% complete at the time. So those are some of the issues that we're picking up now and that we have to fix, which is an Eskom issue. So this has nothing to do, this amount, with a contractor failure or whatever. So these were design errors and perhaps specifications not 100% finalized at the time that we started. So it is a combination of both. And I think that deals with Ted's issue. On CAPEX, it is not only CAPEX, it's a combination of CAPEX and OPEX. So you're 100% right, so there's nothing wrong with your eyesight.
But again, Ted has to know that maintenance is not part of CAPEX, maintenance itself. It is part of OPEX. It's operating. You have it, you have energy, you have people. Those are the 3 main components of the OPEX.
Chief, I can just add to the response to Ted. Ted, when we do maintenance, it's both OPEX and CAPEX. There's a lot of components that get replaced at the same time. To give you an idea, for this year, the OPEX is 10.3 billion and the CAPEX is 7.4 billion. So it is a combination of both, and depending on which side of the finances you're looking at, obviously you'll pick up particular components as the Chief Exec has done. If I can talk about EAF, DEVA never promised 80%. I'm 100% sure of that. We have been saying that we'd be striving to get back to 80%, but that could take between 2 and 3 years. If my recollection is correct, the last system status briefing was around the middle of the year. And certainly when you look at the EAF going from the middle of the year to the end of the financial year, you actually expect it to come down on a cumulative basis once again, because you have a lot of plant out of service for plant maintenance. So given that where we were, I think when DEVA spoke at about 76%, if I recall, DEVA would never have said that we would be at 80% by the end of the year. But we can take it offline. I can look at the numbers with you.
Just to add, we talked about the ideal. What would be ideal by 2021? And we said it will be 80-10-10. That is planned and unplanned. That doesn't try to justify that the mere fact that we are now below 75. But we'll make an effort, because we have 3 stages. At 75 is adequate, but anything below 75 is not adequate. And at 80 is ideal, you know. So we are sitting at 74.2 now for financial year, and we're below the 75 that is ideal, but we'll make an effort to go back to 75. Then, coal price. Oh, yeah, then Ted, you did talk about that coal price will continue to increase until new mines come to being. I think you're right. I think the basics of economics is that when you increase supply, the price will come down. But we cannot possibly be able to do that in the meantime. Henceforth, we have invested, I think we have put aside about 6.5 billion over the next 4 to 5 years on cost plus mines, because we have learned that the longer the term is, the better is the price. So that's what we've been trying to do. We are cognizant of the fact that the impact will not happen next year, but it will take 2 or 3 years. But that 6 billion will have a far better return than us continuing to sign short-term contracts, because they're expensive.
Chair, if I can maybe chip in a bit, is that there was also a study done, between the Minerals Council and Nedbank, I think in 2017, about overall investment, in the mining space, and it showed that, from a resource perspective, South Africa is quite attractive from an ore body perspective. However, from a policy part, with the MPDRA repeal and the mining charter that we're going to and fro, it created uncertainty where, investment were not coming, fast, forward. So the need for additional mines is still there, and Eskom can't, like the Chief said, can't do it all by itself. The cost plus mines, certainly, I think we've taken a position on that. But there is still a need for additional mines. The study from Nedbank and Minerals Council talks about 20 billion rand in the coal mining space, investment that will come through in the next 4 years. And there's a potential if, a certainty is created, for an additional 50 billion rand, in the 3 years cycle thereafter and so on. So certainly, there is that particular need so that, we can fulfill our consumption and the other consumption. Then there was a question about when do we recover. We've certainly displayed that our base plan says from September 2019 we start recovering. That is basically we'll be at the level where stations start becoming, sitting at what we call expected level, which is far above alarm where we are. So it's from September 2019. However, we have now identified a need to deal with the extremely low levels now, where it makes us vulnerable to impact due to rain, to bring in the 4 million tons. So the question about the 4 million tons is not only to address the station below 10, it is to address all stations that are below minimum, so that by the end of March next year, all stations will be above minimum level at alarm level, and thereafter, like the rest of the current recovery plan. It's just to accelerate like the recovery plan so that we can get out of the woods with regards to extremely low stock levels.
But is the minimum level, is that 10 days or is that 20 days?
The minimum level, there's two. We've got an internal, let me explain, there's an internal part which is different for station to stations, okay? The lowest in terms of the Eskom, like a standard is about 23 days. And then except for Komati station, because it's quite different. The grid code minimum level is 20 days. So the level we're talking about here in this case is to have all stations above, like a 23 days, like a coal stock level. Yeah. Okay.
All right, I think you're covered, including the investment part. It's the CE did mention it's about 6 billion or 6.5 billion.
So again, can I just clarify, is that the amount that you set aside to invest in the mines, or is that for buying coal from the mines? Is that sort of investment capital, investment in the mine itself?
No, this is capital investment in the cost plus, in the 5 cost plus coal mines, yeah, based on the life of mine plans, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think we're going to go for the last round now, unless maybe there are other serious pressing questions. So let me get an indication. I see Charlotte here. I see Sikonati. And from what I can see, then Terence. If you're all comfortable, I don't want to close any doors for anyone. I don't want you to idibala. That will be the 3 that we'll take, and then that will be the end of it. We'll start with Charlotte.
Just a quick question. What's your definition of long-term contract? Are we talking 20 years or 30 years?
Thank you, Charlotte. Let's take Sikonati.
Pagamani, when are you laying charges of corruption and theft against McKinsey? McKinsey for the theft of 1.6 billion rand, which they returned $1 billion later. When are you laying the charges?
Thank you, Sikonati. Terence?
Just in terms of your message to the President with a $100 billion investment drive and the role that electricity plays in, or secure electricity plays in galvanizing such investment, what are you telling the President at the moment, given that some of these investments are going to start taking place if we believe the 290 billion that was announced in the next year, and some of those are very energy intensive investments. What is your message to the President? And also, if you were to just go right back to the beginning of your presentation, you said some of this is inherent and some are mistakes that we've made. If you could pinpoint what is the main mistake that the current executive team has made that you would highlight over this period to maybe have made the situation worse than it should have been. Thanks.
Thank you, Terence. CE? Yes, that will be it from our side. If you can just respond to them.
Okay. Long-term contracts, I think, Dan?
Yeah, thank you. Okay. In our space, when we talk long-term, it's the historical 40-year contract, which I think in common, reference is ultra long-term. But short-term, we talk normally between 0 to 3 years, and then, 3 to 6 years is what medium-term is. And then anything beyond that is actually long-term. But our long-term, we're talking now the life of the resource matching the life of the power station. So it's ultra long-term. But yeah, anything, between 8 and 10 above, it is actually indeed long-term.
Just responding to Sikonati. Sikonati, how these cases are being managed is different from the way you have managed yours, where you see a person stealing an apple, then you go to the police station and report. What these cases, what they've done now, is to consolidate the institutions that have been corrupted with the forces or with the agencies that are seeking or investigating. So instead of going to the police station and report and doing all those things, I meet SIU almost every other week and there's a long list of cases they are looking into. I don't have to go sometimes to report to the police because I'm kept informed about the development of what is happening on all the cases. I know that we have roughly about 14, 15 cases which have been opened, but most of the arrests that you will see coming in will be arrests that have been managed in that partnership kind of way.
You have not answered my question with respect, sir. The people that steal apples always get arrested anyway, and they always get arrested and dealt with. The people that steal billions never get arrested. My question is, when are you laying charges of theft, fraud and corruption against Mackenzie? The question is when, and what are you waiting for?
No, I don't have to wait for anything. If you are stealing an apple, you don't have the whole institution having a meeting with SIU every other week to discuss the developments and investigations of all these cases with NPA, and also over and above that talking to Zondo. It's a total different case altogether. We are working as one team, providing the information that we have, what is happening, and we are kept updated by the SIU. In fact, I'm getting tired of sitting with them every other week to hear about the developments, what is happening. I need this information.
I'm asking a different question.
No.
When are you laying criminal charges of theft? This is a particular, it's very different from whatever the SIU is investigating. I'm talking about a particular issue. Money was stolen, and it was found in the account of Mackenzie and returned. When are you laying the charges of corruption and theft?
If you had read the agreement that was reached between us, NPA, and Mackenzie, you will note there's a paragraph that explains this clearly, that the settlement that took place does not exonerate Mackenzie into going, or us, into going into a criminal case. And that's what we've been doing. We've been working with the police, and not with the police, with the SIU. And we are working with the NPA, not just on this issue, on the long list of things that we are currently doing. I do not see the need to go and report the case when I'm working with the senior police level that are investigating this. It will just be the duplication of what we are currently doing.
Pagamani, I'm dealing at this point with one case, which you admit you have not laid charges of theft and corruption. When are you doing it? You've just admitted that the agreement does not exonerate Mackenzie from facing the consequences of their criminal behavior of stealing 1 billion rand from the people of South Africa. You have that responsibility in terms of the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act to lay a charge of theft against Mackenzie. When are you doing it?
I will answer this for the last time, Sikonat. I have collected all the information we have in all the cases, including Mackenzie. I have given this to the SIU because the SIU has a large team of people that are looking into the state capture. This is not just an isolated case. And I do meet these people every other week to discuss what we'll be discussing with the police. I'm just saying the nature, the approach of these cases is different from the ones that we've had previously.
You may have answered it for the last time, but I will ask the question again because you have not answered it. First, you did not want to go get the interest that they owed on that money, and now they have paid it. Why are you avoiding laying the charges of theft, corruption and fraud against Mackenzie? And you avoided collecting the interest on that money, and you now, in your presentation, admit that you received a 100 million rand interest that you didn't want to get. Why are you avoiding the action against Mackenzie?
Okay.
You're talking about the people who steal apples.
I think I will answer this, Konat, for the last time. Konat, there was never, at any moment in time, at any moment in time, when we're negotiating with McKinsey, that we didn't talk about interest, that we will want that interest back. There was never at any moment in time. We knew that we were going to get the interest. But the deal
can
and
I
the
interrupt
agreement...
you there? Because now the correct fact is, I have a letter in response to my question from Eskom, which said we did not discuss interest. McKinsey said nobody asked us for the interest, and they paid the interest when Business Day asked the question. So you avoided collecting the interest, you're avoiding laying criminal charges. Why?
Maybe my legal person will be able... I'm trying to provide an answer, and you were working on this.
No, you're not answering the question. You are telling me about other cases. I'm asking you about one question, one case.
But
when are you laying criminal charges of theft against McKinsey?